Welcome back, New York sports fans. It's episode number 3 of New York State of Sports. And just like the Knicks were reigning threes, Ricky Keeler back with you here. On this week's episode, the Knicks extend their win streak to 8 despite more injuries, despite more turmoil. The Knicks just keep winning. The Nets, well, they just keep losing. And Ben Simmons is here, but he's not here. The Jets, their system of structure also isn't there. We'll dive into the latest report from The Athletic. We'll talk Mets adding relievers while the Yankees aren't adding any. And we'll preview the big game Saturday afternoon at the Garden between St. John's and number 1 UConn. It's all coming up here on New York State of Sports. We're the city that never sleeps, so why not give the takes that never sleeps? It all starts coming up next. So we also have a special announcement for next week's show. Just want to remind you that we're going to do the show Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern. So normally we're on at 2. We're going live Thursday at 3 next week because we want to talk about the trade deadline live. Trade deadline is 3 p.m. Eastern. And I want to get the most live opinions possible for the Knicks. I want to be able to react live to what's going on at the trade deadline. So we're not be able to do that by looking at the Knicks perspective. Again, thank you for joining us. Ricky Keeler here at Rickinator555 on Twitter. Join along in the chat. Knicks trying again for their 9th straight win. 7 o'clock tonight against the Indiana Pacers. They get the Lakers on Saturday night, which is a big game. Not as much for a playoff position, but it's just fun to see LeBron at the Garden. I think I'm intrigued by that. And thanks, Ralph, for joining in to the show. Again, chime in the chat and Spreaker if you're here. Tweet me at NY State Sports IE as well. And you got to love this Knicks team. Without Julius Randle, he gets hurt on Saturday. You're thinking the sky's falling, and they just find a way to get it done. Blowing out the Nuggets, blowing out the Heat, beating Charlotte, beating Utah in the back-to-back when Utah was in Brooklyn. Tom Thibodeau's got this team rolling. They got this teamwork going. Dante DiVincenzo's draining three-pointers, so that contract looks great. And with no Randall, no Anunoby, no Grimes, well, Grimes is banged up. I don't know if Grimes is going to play tonight or not. But this is a Knicks squad that just continues to find ways to roll and find ways to produce different nights, whether it's a triple-double from Josh Hart, DiVincenzo's hitting threes, Brunson putting up his usual numbers. And now the path to the 2 seed is attainable. Reason being, when you look at this team, they've got everything figured out. Philly's got Embiid banged up. Maxi's banged up. They don't know what they are, and who knows what they do at the deadline. You've got Milwaukee with Doc Rivers losing to Portland last night, and Dame Lillard's return to Portland. Doc Rivers is trying to figure things out. The Knicks aren't trying to figure things out. They kind of know what they are. And that's a good thing. When you know your identity this late in the season and you're playing hard every night, you can win any game that you set your mind to. This team won 14 games in January. That's the most, tied for the most they've won since 1994 in a given month. And they've got a pretty good schedule coming up this week. They get Indiana, as I said, at home twice in the next 5 games. Halliburton's been banged up. You've got the Lakers who pick and choose when they want to play defense. You've got the Grizzlies who are not very good. And then after we do the show next week, they'll play Dallas at home. So the Garden's going to be a good home cooking this week and a lot of great games. So if you get a chance, go to the Garden, get some tickets. This team is worth the price of admission. And I think the conference finals is an attainable goal for this group. Last year they get to the semifinals. They lose in Game 6 to the Heat. And everyone's looking at it as like, well, it's not a failure but disappointment. I think you look at this Knicks team, and I think they have set the standard to make a conference final attainable. And that's why getting the 2 seed is so critical. If they beat the Pacers tonight, they're only a half game out. And that's a big deal. Because you look at this squad, you look at where the East could set up. You want that first round series and that second round series where you have home court, where you've got that advantage. Especially if it's Philly or Milwaukee in round 2. I want Game 7 potentially at Madison Square Garden. And that's where the standard should be for this Knicks team. They don't need to make a big move. It would be great to see a big move out there. But when you look at the deadline a week from now, there's not a huge piece that's available. They're not going to get Mikal Bridges from the Nets. As much as you would love another Villanova player here, I don't see Brooklyn trading with the Knicks. I mean, is Bruce Brown maybe the most big-name trade piece you can get? I don't see Jimmy Butler coming here. I think that's a pipe dream. And I think right now you just try to looking for improvements on the margins. Improvements with the depth. Maybe adding some front court depth to help out so you can ease Randall back in. Some front court depth to ease Mitchell Robinson back in. Those are the pieces, I think, where you don't give up so much of that draft capital and you save it for the summer. You save it for when you can get that big star that sees what you're doing in New York and wants to come here. Because I'm sure the league is looking around and seeing, hey, this squad's doing it, and I could be the missing piece. Any star could see that. But I don't think a big move is necessarily what this team needs, nor do I think a big move is going to be out there. And welcome to the show, Taryn. Happy to have you. Dennis chiming in saying Knicks are the team to beat. They're hot right now. Boston has good players, but so do we. Yeah, I think that the Knicks could be competitive with the Celtics. But it's hard to say right now that I'm going to make the Knicks the favorite to go to the finals when the Celtics are 22-2 at home. They're protecting home court as well as anybody. They've got good depth in the starting lineup when you look at Tatum and Brown and Porzingis. But you can compete with them. I don't think the Knicks have shown this week with their blowout of Denver, the win over Miami, they can compete with anybody. So again, if you missed it at the top of the show, next Thursday we're doing the show at 3 p.m. Eastern, not 2 p.m. Trade deadline is 3 p.m. on Thursday, so we're going to go live right at the end of the trade deadline, recap the day, recap the action, who was the winners, who were the losers, and then kind of reset the standard going into the All-Star break and the rest of the second half. Nets, on the other hand, they take 2 steps forward, they take 2 steps back. They played well against Utah earlier in the week. Ben Simmons all of a sudden finds something because he actually gets in the lineup, which misses last night's big game against Phoenix, which I wasn't surprised that Kevin Durant got some cheers more so than boos. I think that you have to cheer Kevin Durant's return. I don't think the return for Kevin Durant was messy, as opposed to if Kyrie comes next week and James Harden. Those would be the boos I would give because they forced their way out. I think Durant looked at the writing on the wall. The Nets looked at the writing on the wall with him and said, you know what, we both kind of need some separation. So there's no reason to kind of be hostile toward Kevin Durant last night. He gets a video tribute, and the Suns just roll. But you look at Simmons, who had 6 assists in the first quarter against the Jazz, and then he doesn't play. So you're looking at a lack of reliability from Ben Simmons that really makes that trade they made with Philly an abject failure. And there was a report from Mike Scotto this week that the Rockets were offering potentially to give the Nets back all that draft capital they gave up for Harden to get Bridges. And if I'm Brooklyn, why don't you do that? The Nets are not going anywhere right now. They don't really have a set foundation of what they want to do. They've got some good pieces with Bridges and Cam Johnson and Cam Thomas and Nick Claxton. And they competed with Phoenix last night for about a half. And then Yusuf Nurkic goes for 25 and 9. When you have Beal, Durant, and Booker, and you get mainly beat as great as Durant's game was last night, you get mainly beat by Nurkic in the paint. Like, they had no answer for the size. And like we've said the last couple of shows, do you rely on Jacques Vaughn to get everything done? And my answer to that is no. But that's why if I'm the Nets, I'm looking to be more of a seller than I am a buyer at this point. When you look at where they are for the playoff spot, they're a game behind Atlanta. Atlanta's looking, I'm sure, to make some moves. Maybe they stand pat. Maybe they trade Dejounte Murray. Who knows? But when you have to rely on a player that never plays, that's a problem. When you're Sean Marks and you can kind of reset everything going forward, I don't see why you don't do it. The Nets have been a franchise where they've tried to make the big move and it doesn't work. Whether it was getting Pierce and Garnett, that didn't work. Whether it was getting Durant, Kyrie, Harden, that didn't work. Which was the flashing graphic last night. If you watched the game on ABC, Durant, Booker, and Beal have played in 17 games together this year. Doesn't seem like a lot, and it isn't. But Durant, Harden, and Kyrie played in just 16 games together when they were in Brooklyn. So at least now Durant's got more of a core with him. He's got more a sign of stability, if that makes sense. And both sides, I think, have got what they wanted out of it. Brooklyn got some young, promising pieces. But what are they going to take those pieces from there? And with Bridges, probably if he were available, you could make the argument he would be the best player available in the trade market. But there are not a lot of teams with draft capital going into this trade deadline. I think there's like 10 teams or so, well, a little under 10 teams that have a lot of draft picks to deal. Knicks are one of them. Teams love draft picks. but how many can you package together, whether it's protected, unprotected, whatever it is? Like, if the Knicks look for front court, we mentioned Brown. Backcourt, I look at Malcolm Brogdon. I look at Jordan Clarkson as an option. But what do the Jazz do? Right now they're tied with the Lakers for the 9 seed. I think that's what the play-in kind of creates is, are you trying for the play-in, or are you going to try to compete, try to get for the long term, maybe tank down and try to get into the lottery, even though the draft is not its strongest going into next year. So again, we'll see where this all goes. Again, be excited about the Knicks. They were able to succeed through some adversity this week without Randle winning 2 games. I think that's huge. Can that continue? We'll see. Indiana's a tough team right now. If the season ended today, Knicks and Pacers would play in a first-round series. And I think that's actually fun. Indiana's a fun team to watch, especially now that they added Siakam into the mix. So we'll take our first time out. We'll come back and we'll discuss the chaos in Florham Park. There's a new report out about the Jets' 2023 season, and let's just say Robert Saleh might want to take my phone because I've got a lot to say about him. You're listening to New York State of Sports here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. We'll be right back after this.
Hey sports fans, do you like wine? Well, we've got the show for you. This is Let's Wine About Sports, a show where we talk about wine and sports simultaneously. From the classic Cabernet Sauvignon all the way down to the grapes that you've never even heard of before. Oh yeah, we cover it all. And we'll talk about a little bit of sports as well. Football, hockey, collegiate, women's sports, it doesn't matter. We're going to talk about it all, and we're going to whine about it all. So join me Monday at 8 p.m. on IU Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
IE Sports Radio fans, it's your boy, the UCONN-St, the host of the premier professional wrestling podcast online today, the IE Elite Wrestling Show. If you're a fan and have a passion for the world of professional wrestling, this is the show for you. I take you inside the ropes with all the athleticism, high-flying, and hard-hitting action, and then we take it backstage with all the backstage drama and backstabbing that goes on in the world of professional wrestling today. If something's going on in the world of professional wrestling, rest assured, the UCONN-St knows what's going on, and he's going to let you know too. If you're a fan, check us out every Tuesday, 12 p.m. Central Standard Time, 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, only on IE Sports Radio. The IE Elite Wrestling Show, your direct feed for all that is professional wrestling, on the only network that is your direct feed for all that is sports. Check us out.
Hey there, sports fans. Are you looking for a sports show that maybe isn't 100% about sports?
Then you might want to check out the Sports Couple Perspectives right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Most sports shows cover only scores and stats, and while we're not opposed to that, we dig a little deeper into sports issues and some of the hottest topics in athletics.
In addition to sports, we take a journey through my neck of the woods, pop culture, with movie reviews of both sports and non-sports films.
Speaking of pop culture, make sure to participate in our game nights, where we quiz each other on our specialties, and you, the listeners, can win IE Sports Radio apparel.
We always have a great time learning more about each other's worlds, one show at a time.
So join us each week on the Sports Couple Perspectives, right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Of course, we had to go into our second segment leading into that drop because it's our founder Larry's birthday. So happy birthday out there to Larry. Thanks for all he does here for IE Sports Radio, direct feed for all that is sports. I'm Ricky Kiro once again back with you. We talked Knicks and Nets in the first segment, and I mentioned that Robert Saleh might want to take my phone because you look at the recent report that came out on Wednesday from Diana Rossini and Zach Rosenblatt in The Athletic, and this is just damning for the Jets. We talk about a team that already has been known for dysfunction, that's been known for chaos, that's been known for not being able to get anything right. And this report just adds on to it. And it just shows you the state of both of these New York football teams. The Giants, they've got their own issues. They're trying to find a defensive coordinator. They're not able to get the right people in place necessarily, but you don't doubt that Brian Dable is going to find what he's looking for. And at least they're looking to change some things up after the departure of Wade Martindale. But what are the Jets exactly trying to do to fix anything? If you read this report from Rossini, who's been dead on the entire time, it just goes to show you how much the Jets put their 2023 season in the Aaron Rodgers basket and had no clue what to do after he gets hurt 4 plays into the year. And to me, that's just organizational dysfunction. When you put that much hope into one guy, it does not work. And it begs the question, we'll dive into some of the specifics in this report. Bill Belichick's available. Mike Rabel's available. Pete Carroll's available. 3 guys that, while at least Belichick and Carroll's case are up there in age, represent stability. They represent a foundation of at least you know what you're going to get. And right now, this Jet organization just needs some sense of normalcy around it. You can't tell me that Belichick, Rabel, or Carroll are not better than Rob Saleh right now. They're not. Saleh is not better than those 3 guys. So if you're Woody Johnson, you're that Jet ownership, or you're Joe Douglas, why are you afraid to make the move? And don't give me that Saleh never had a chance with a quarterback. He was there when they drafted Zach Wilson with Joe Douglas. And maybe Douglas fears that he'll go along with Saleh. I don't know. But you read this report, and Rosenblatt and Rossini spoke to 30 sources in and around the organization. So while you may say, oh, it's just a report, when you speak to 30 people, it's more than just a plain report. And you've got a case. Let's start with the offensive coordinator, Nathaniel Hackett, where at times he never even seemed to be really overly preparing for the week. And that's alarming. Because to not get people involved until the end of the week, that just shows you're not really capable of getting the job done. And you're just relying on Aaron Rodgers to do everything. One coach, from the report, one coach that was concerning how little urgency Hackett and his staff showed in trying to fix it, saying he'd never seen a team watch less practice tape in training camp than the Jets did with Hackett. Oh, I guess they were more concerned with looking at Hard Knocks. This team seemed more concerned with where they looked at publicly than what they looked at privately. Multiple coaches and players described Hackett as lacking attention to detail. For most of the season, Hackett would meet with offensive line coach / running game coordinator Keith Carter and passing game coordinator Todd Downing during the week, but wouldn't get together with the rest of the offensive staff until the last minute of game prep. You have a quarterback that needs every bit of game prep possible. They doomed Zach Wilson. As bad as Zach Wilson is, you can't look at that and say that's all his fault. You compare situations in the division, I think Zach Wilson's more fixable than Mac Jones. Because I don't think Zach Wilson has ever really been given a chance to succeed. And have a game plan built around him and built around his skill set and to let him just let loose. Because you have a coach in Hackett who I don't know why he still has a job. Maybe I do. It's because Aaron Rodgers is there. Because that's ridiculous. Then you have a case where Saleh right now thinks he's going to end up like Vic Fangio. Just a known defensive coach, but not a good head coach. Then there was the case when Aaron Rodgers said on the Pat McAfee show that there's been a lot, they've got to stop with the leaks. So in the report, Saleh holds a meeting 2 days after that Rodgers comments where he asked the leaker, hey, come forward and you're not going to get in trouble. And we all know that case in school where you don't want to be the one that comes forward, even though the teacher says you're not going to get in trouble. You're going to get in trouble. It's just not going to be as bad. He also threatens to take their cell phones and go through them. Remember, this was after the report that Zach Wilson was reluctant to get back in the lineup. Like, who does Saleh think he is? A high school principal? Like, you're not fooling anybody. And which begs the question after this report, and it was somebody who pointed this out. It was Robert Saleh's birthday yesterday, by the way, when this came out. And the Jets' social media didn't wish him a happy birthday. Which is weird. They've done that for the last, I think it was 10 plus years or something like that. So what's taking Woody Johnson so long to realize this has to get fixed? Oh, because Aaron Rodgers is your coach, Aaron Rodgers is your GM, Aaron Rodgers is your president. You sold your soul to be good, and you have to reap the cause and effect from it. It's plain and simple. You didn't fix the offensive line. Yes, you have Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall, but what's that doing for you? In a division where Miami's changing their defensive coordinator, the Bills, who knows what they'll look like after next year. We're a division that, yes, has been run by Buffalo, but you've got a chance to change it with the right moves. And you can't tell me that you bring in Mike Rabel or Pete Carroll. Let's take out Belichick for a second. I don't think that would ever happen. Honestly, I think if Belichick's going to go anywhere, it's the Giants. If you look at the two New York teams going into 25. The only problem with the Giant situation is I think Dable and Joe Shane are going to be allowed to pick another quarterback besides Daniel Jones, whether that's this year, whether that's next year. And I think there's more of a attachment from John Mara and Bill Belichick than there is Woody Johnson and Bill Belichick. Which, if you saw the news today, the Commanders hired Dan Quinn, Seahawks hired Mike McDonald from the Ravens, which means Bill Belichick will not have a job in 2024, at least on the NFL head coaching side. But even if it was Bill, let's play the hypothetical and Belichick returns as the HC of the NYJ. There's at least something, there's stability, there's consistency. You know what you're going to get. Now, you may not want to pick a new quarterback, and maybe Belichick's not the best with that. But Rabel is. Rabel got Ryan Tannehill to win an AFC Championship game. Pete Carroll changed Geno Smith. Developed Russell Wilson. Who's Robert Saleh known to develop? Even in a game, if you want to get younger, there's a lot of younger guys. Seattle's hired a guy, Mike McDonald's like 36 years old. A defensive guy. You can make changes. You just choose not to. And I remember the first show we did where Saleh said we conquered demons by going 7-10. What demons did you conquer? You're still mediocre. You still whacked to where you were. And when Aaron Rodgers comes back, does he be the Aaron Rodgers that he was a few years ago? Or is he the Aaron Rodgers that he is now? They've got the defense in place. I mean, there's very good talent on the defensive side of the ball. But when you have a case, if you're Robert Saleh and you're looking for a vote of confidence purportedly week 11 and you don't get one till week 17, especially after, imagine if the Jets had actually lost that game to the Commanders, where they had the big lead late and they had to ride to kick a field goal at the end of the game. And you wonder if you're a Jet fan, maybe you should have rooted for a loss there. Because maybe you would have got changes. And right now you don't have any. Let's dive in a couple of comments here. As Taryn says, to quote a Jet reporter, someone who's pounding a square peg into a round hole. Yeah, it's like they're trying to not find the right solution, just find any solution. It's like push panic button here. Jen B says, and welcome to the show, Jen. I agree with you on both points, Zach and Hackett. Bow down to A-Rod or else. Taryn also said, when Aaron Rodgers came to the Jets brought all of Rodgers' buddies from Green Bay. Yeah. What has Randall Cobb and Alan Lazard done? Nothing. And people said, well, Tom Brady brought people to Tampa. Tom Brady didn't really bring any of his teammates there. Shaq Mason was traded there. Rob Gronkowski had come out of retirement. And he got Leonard Fournette. You can count Antonio Brown, but Antonio Brown was there for 2 games. Maybe really only a game. But Brady didn't look to change everything in that system, and Bruce Arians at least made it so that Brady wasn't running things, at least on the surface. This is the complete opposite. Good point by Bishop. It's wild Belichick not being head coach in 24. He's waiting for Andy Reid to retire. I'm not so sure. I know Adam Schefter's been talking about that, but you have to wonder if Andy Reid does retire, maybe they just keep it with Matt Nagy. And I know Chicago fans out there will be like, Matt Nagy? But if Patrick Mahomes has a good relationship with him, he's going to be the coach. I don't know if Bill Belichick and Patrick Mahomes could coexist, even though that would be a very scary combination for the rest of the NFL if that were to happen. But why are the Jets always asleep at the wheel? I mentioned the 3 guys they could have had. They also could have called for Jim Harbaugh before he went to the Chargers. And you can't tell me New York wouldn't appeal to Harbaugh in some way, shape, or form. So it doesn't make sense. And I agree with Bishop. I'd rather have Vrabel than Nagy. I'm just bringing up the point that I think they would try to keep it to where Patrick Mahomes would have his guy there. And kind of keep that foundation going necessarily. I don't know if Andy Reid will retire or not. I'll get into the Super Bowl stuff next week. We'll do that. But for right now, I think you look at a Jet team that loves the spotlight, but then they get the spotlight and they crumble. And they fall flat on their face. And they're going to be on the spotlight a lot next year. Don't think that the networks are going to give Aaron Rodgers 3 or 4 more primetime games, because they will. But they have to fix it, and it starts internally. If you're a bad team, internal warts start showing all over the place. How do you fix it? You win. Robert Saleh better win, because if he doesn't, there's coaches in the wings waiting to take the job. So we'll take one more break. We'll come back and we'll look ahead to a big basketball game at the Garden. While there's Lakers-Knicks Saturday night, there's a noon game you might want to tune into that could have some big ramifications both for the NCAA tournament and if you're looking to see how one team could help fill out your bracket to a national championship. You're listening to the New York State of Sports here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. We'll be right back after this.
What's happening, sports fans? Are you a fan of Southern California sports? Are you looking for a show hotter than a hot summer day in California? Then look no further than the SoCal Supreme Sports Show, where I talk about all things Southern California sports. That's right, all sports teams from Southern California. From the hard-hitting tackles of the NFL, to the killer crossovers and big three-pointers of the NBA and WNBA, to the grand slams of the MLB, to the bone-chilling goals of the NHL, and to the booming kicks of the MLS, the SoCal Supreme Sports Show has it all for you. Oh, and let us not forget about the college sports as well. So join me, Taryn Rodriguez, every week here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
What's good, everyone? It's Drewski, the host of Heart of Texas Sports on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. On this station, we cover everything in the Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas area. From where we cover the Dallas Cowboys, the Dallas Stars, Dallas Mavericks, Dallas Wings, Texas Rangers, TCU, SMU, we cover it all right here every Wednesdays from 9 to 10 p.m. Central Time. Make sure you stay live with me on the Heart of Texas Sports on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Welcome to the 305, aka the Magic City, and this is Magic City Scoreboard. I'm your host, JB, and right here we're going to talk anything Miami. Miami Dolphins, Miami Heat, Miami Hurricanes, Marlins, Panthers, Inter Miami, and even high school football. So join me once a week right here on Magic City Scoreboard on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed to all that is sports.
Magic City Scoreboard, one of your two shows left to appear tonight here on IE Sports Radio, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. Magic City Scoreboard with JB, breaking down all the Miami sports. And then at 8 p.m., it's the Extra Mile with Daryl and Christopher talking some auto racing. You had the Rolex 24 happen this past weekend at Daytona. The Busch Clash is this weekend. Of course, the Daytona 500 coming up in 2 weeks. So the NASCAR season going to be here before you know it. So be sure to tune into both those shows. Coming up here on IE Sports Radio tonight, starting at 7 p.m. Eastern. Want to get into St. John's and Connecticut, and we'll talk about the big game at the Garden. Lakers-Knicks is 8:30, but noon Eastern on Fox. Saturday afternoon, it's UConn against St. John's. And that is a game that has more on the surface than just what's on the court. For those unfamiliar with the coaching rivalry between Dan Hurley and Rick Pitino, let's just say the two of them do not like each other very much. Of course, Hurley knocked out Pitino's Iona Gales last year in the NCAA tournament. And whenever Rick Pitino talks about setting the standard in the Big East, he talks about Connecticut, who's the defending national champions, and rightfully so. But he's also mentioned in some cases about, I don't whine to the officials, something like that. And Hurley is very demonstrative toward the officials when you watch some of these games. I remember watching him when I was a St. John's student back in the early 2010s. He was coaching Wagner. And you could see that this guy was going to be a good coach at the big market, and he has succeeded at Connecticut. But it's clear, Hurley and Pitino, there's no love lost to two, to the point where Pitino is trying to get St. John's UConn next year to take place on Lou Carnesecca's birthday at Carnesecca Arena, which, you know, a lot of UConn fans love going to MSG, whether it's for the Big East tournament or whether it's for just any marquee game at MSG in general. So there's a lot of hostile blood there between the two. And that's going to create for a really fun atmosphere. If you go back to the game that St. John's and Connecticut played back in December, the Red Storm really showed a lot in that ball game. They had the lead late in the fourth quarter. Well, not the fourth quarter, second half. I'm thinking NBA. But Connecticut found a way to win late, 69-65. Now, Caravan for Connecticut. Oh, no, not Caravan. Donovan Clingan didn't play in that game. And Clingan's probably one of their better players. But the Red Storm still held UConn to 5 of 18 from 3. They were able to even them up on the rebounding edge. Soriano had 14 and 11. Denise Jenkins had 13 points. And for the most part, the Red Storm held the good UConn guard combo of Tristan Newton and Cam Spencer in check. But there's a theme going around with this St. John's team that is concerning. Right now, they're an NCAA tournament team. Last night, they lose to Xavier in a game they never were ahead, constantly playing from behind. They struggled in the first half, looked very sloppy, bad turnovers, foul trouble. Denise Jenkins tried to keep them in the game. Joel Soriano got hot at the end of the first half and began the second half in the paint. But they're not doing the little things and not making the key stops late. If you go to that second half last night, it was strictly St. John's and Xavier playing basket to basket with each other, and the Red Storm can't afford to play that way. One of the things Patino pointed out last night was that while the press was working, they weren't getting back quickly after the press was beaten to avoid those transition baskets. And you can't make those mistakes against Connecticut. But I look at a theme that's troubling for St. John's going into this game. They've lost 5 games in the Big East. 4 of them, this is not counting the Seton Hall embarrassment they had at the Prudential Center a few weeks ago. 4 of them, they have had the lead late or been in the game late, and they can't seem to make the 1 or 2 plays to get it done. They had a chance to win at Connecticut in December, couldn't do it. Had a chance to win at Creighton. You could argue if there should have been a foul at the end of the game. Nevertheless, they didn't do it. Had the lead in the second half against Marquette, was down a possession late, didn't do it. And then count last night, which isn't a bad loss at the Cintas Center. Xavier is good on the metrics if you look at the NCAA tournament. But if St. John's had gotten the sweep, they'd be 6-4 in the Big East and be in the 5 spot all by themselves. Right now, there's a 4-way tie for 5th in the Big East at 5-5 between St. John's, Xavier, Providence, and Butler. Now, why is the top 5 so important? Top 5 gets a bye in the Big East tournament. That's huge, especially when you're looking at this team and they may need 1 Big East win in the conference tournament a month from now, as we hit today being February 1st, of getting into the tournament. Now, it's not doom and gloom. I think you look at this team and they've got 4 games left with DePaul and Georgetown combined. They should win all 4. If they don't, they're probably in danger of missing the tournament anyway. That would put them at 9. They have UConn this on Saturday, Marquette on the road, and Creighton at home in February. If they win one of those, that puts them at 10. Then they have Seton Hall at home, Providence on the road, Butler on the road. If they get one of those or even 2 of those, that puts them at 12. I think 11 or 12 wins in the Big East get you in, considering how competitive this conference is. So Saturday's game for the Red Storm isn't a must-win, but it could be a season-defining win if they get it. The last time St. John's beat number 1, Chris Mullen was the coach. It was the game they won at Villanova with Shamori Pons and with that group that was underachieving, but they somehow had a week where they beat Duke and then they beat Nova. It was really a fun week. But that week spoke to this what this team is capable of being. I think Pitino has done a good job of setting the standard, but this could be a huge monumental defining win that gets the program back on the map nationally. Regionally, I think they're on the map. I think Pitino draws eyeballs. Nationally is where they need to get back in that what they were in the 80s, which they might never will be. But when I look at this game, I think one thing you can expect, both teams are going to play physical. And we'll see how the officiating is in this game. Reason I say that, last night, whether it was the St. John's game or UConn played Providence, and give Providence a lot of credit, kept the game close, very competitive. Devin Carter and that bunch did a great job. Those two games had, I think, over 45 fouls in both combined between St. John's Xavier and UConn Providence. So there could be a lot of whistles in this one. If that's the case and St. John's can't defend without fouling, they don't have a lot of depth on that bench. I know that they like to rotate guys in and there is depth, but let's say Soriano picks up 2 quick fouls. You only got Zubi Ejiofor and Drissa Traore. There's not a lot to contend with that 2-headed monster that Connecticut has in the paint. And then you look at one guy I'm looking forward to produce on Saturday that needs to is R.J. Lewis, who was a no-show last night. Jacobs and Soriano did everything, and if St. John's just had a third player last night that did something, they would have won. They would have stole that game. Yes, I say stole that game because they never really were in control, but they somehow found a way back in it. Their defense, getting stops, pushing the ball in the paint, kind of keeping those fundamentals going. So again, this game isn't big I think regionally it's big, but if nationally St. John's can beat number 1, beat the defending national champions, it sets the tone. They're not on the bubble yet. I think there are a couple losses from being on the bubble. So I think the Big East is like a 5-bid league at least. Maybe it's 6, depending on what things break each way. Looking at the rest of the Big East, Seton Hall hosting Georgetown coming up on February 7th. So they actually have a long layoff here. So that game will be Wednesday. Seton Hall getting that bye week technically. Seton Hall should beat Georgetown pretty easily. So we'll look forward to that game. That's coming up February 18th at UBS Arena in Long Island. Locally in the Big Ten, Rutgers lost to Purdue over the weekend. The game they were close in. They've got at Michigan coming up on Saturday and then at Maryland on Tuesday. So probably looking at 2 losses for Rutgers there. One team I never really talk about here is Syracuse. Why, I don't know. They've got Wake Forest coming up on Saturday, 7:45 tip. Orange right now are 14-7. And the ACC, which is a really mediocre league, 5-5. That's not going to get it done. Right now you're looking at Carolina and Duke, which they both play Saturday, which I think is the best rivalry in, I would say the best rivalry in sports, honestly. Especially when both are in the top 10. Virginia's pretty good. Florida State, 6-3, but they're 12-8 in total. So let's see what the Cuse do. They've got at Wake and then home to Louisville at the Carrier Dome. They're coming off of their last game. They did beat NC State on Saturday, but they lost at Boston College, so they couldn't get the sweep there at BC. But, of course, first year without Jim Boeheim, what do the Cuse exactly look like? That does remain to be seen. Very quickly, we'll do some hockey. Rangers losing Ryan Lindgren against Vegas. Filipino had some practice time, then got hurt in practice. He's likely out for the year. And this is a Rangers squad that got blown out by Vegas last Friday. It looked like their first half was going to end with an absolute disaster. They go to Ottawa, get down 2-0. Then they score 7 unanswered goals. Good sign, yes. But the Rangers need to find some consistency in the second half if they're going to do anything going forward. And we'll see what happens in terms of making a trade. Last night, huge trade in the NHL. And that was one of the targets the Rangers were reportedly looking at, according to Larry Brooks of the Post. Elias Lindholm goes from Calgary to Vancouver. Vancouver gives up a forward in Andrei Kuzmenko, a pair of defensive prospects, Hunter Brustewitz and Yoni Yurmo, a first-round pick this year, and a conditional fourth-round pick. That's a big asking price. Now, the Rangers could look around. There's the names thrown out there like Frank Vetrano, who's been here before. Wouldn't be a shock if that were to happen. But they just have to get some consistency, and I think they have to find another guy that can help in that top 6 to make them successful. In terms of the Islanders, they have been off since last Saturday. Their last game, they lost 3-2 in overtime to Florida. Matthew Tkachuk had the goal in the third to make it 2-1. Kyle Palmieri tied it with under a minute and a half to go, only for Ekman Larson to win it in OT, but still a key point for the Islanders. And then the Devils losing 6-3 to Tampa Bay in a game where they were down 2-0 after the second. Made it 3-2 with about 13 minutes left, and then Tampa just cruised from there. Niles Paul the goal, Steven Stamkos with the goal, 3 assists for Victor Hedman. So going into the second half of the season, of course, the All-Star game is this week. I'll get into some All-Star game ranting in a minute. The Rangers right now lead the Metropolitan by 2 points over Carolina, 7 points over Philadelphia. Islanders are right now in the 4th position. They'd be out of the playoffs, though. The Islanders are 6 points out of a playoff spot behind Toronto and Detroit. And the Devils are 7 points behind. So I don't think the Rangers are in danger of missing the playoffs. I do think the Metropolitan, though, is a little bit dicey. And the Islanders and Devils, we'll see what kind of moves they make with the NHL deadline a month from now to try to make that playoff push. But getting back to All-Stars. One thing I forgot to bring up earlier, NBA All-Star voting comes up tonight in terms of the reserve. Starters were announced, and Jalen Brunson wasn't an All-Star. And I'm going to ding the Knicks for this. I can blame you guys, the listeners, the fans out there, because you didn't vote for Jalen Brunson. It came down to, when you look at the fans, the media, and the players, and players sometimes take this as a joke. Jalen Brunson was tied with Damian Lillard. And it comes down to the fans. And the national fan base wants to see Dame Lillard over Jalen Brunson. It's just the way it is. You know how you can change that? You go vote. But I didn't see a lot of Knicks social media putting out there, hey, vote for Brunson. Vote for Randall. Put your stars out there. The Knicks do really nothing with the media. They want nothing to do with the media. Why? Because James Dolan's concerned about all the negative publicity he got over the years? Well, you deserve most of it. You have a likable team. People want to follow this group. This group is fun. Jalen Brunson should be starting in the All-Star game, and it's because of the lack of marketing around your players. Your GM, Leon Rose, doesn't speak to anybody besides one conversation with Mike Breen publicly. And you could say out there that it doesn't matter if the GM speaks to us, but still, you guys are, the listeners and the fans, owe an explanation about certain moves, or when you make a trade or make a signing. You want to hear from what the state of the team is. The coaches and players and GMs, when the media talks to them, that's the connection they get to the fan. And the fact that Brunson, who should be starting the game, yes, he's going to be a reserve, and hopefully Randall is too, even though he probably won't play. Why can't Brunson? I think he's a borderline top 5 MVP candidate. And he's not starting the All-Star game. I'm not saying Dame Lillard isn't deserving. I think he is. And that's why I'm not really blaming the process. I'm blaming the marketing of the Knicks more than I'm blaming you guys, the listener or the fan. I've seen a lot of attack on the fan, and I agree with it to an extent. But I think it shares for the lack of marketing for the Knicks social media department in the front office. The All-Star games are about the fan. I miss the days, honestly, in baseball when a counter turned home field advantage. I really do. Because to me, it meant there was a pride in playing in the game and something involved. And I know they're glorified exhibitions. And I think interleague play also kind of ruined the baseball All-Star game in general. But it's still about you guys. It's about the fan. And I think there need to be, while I think the fans deserve some criticism for not getting Brunson in the game, I think teams need to market their players. And you have all these platforms, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, or X, Facebook, whatever it is. Find a way to make that happen. Of course, the show here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports, is brought to you by our good folks over at Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky. Planet Jerky's special jerky of the 2022 California League champion Lake Elsinore Storm. Single A affiliate of the San Diego Padres. This all brisket jerky is gluten-free options, contains no MSG, no sodium nitrate, low in sugar, and high in protein. Planet Jerky, the jerky that's on a whole other planet. So we'll take one more quick break. We'll wrap it up coming up next. We'll do a little baseball. And the reliever market. We're only 2 weeks from pitchers and catchers. One team helped their bullpen this week. The other, I'm still waiting to see an answer. You're listening to New York State of Sports, IE Sports Radio. One more quick timeout, and we'll wrap it up after this.
Hey, sports fans. Are you in the market for Florida sports, or just keeping up with the latest in the Panhandle? Palm Tree Sports is a dedicated audio hub to all things sports in the Sunshine State. We cover current events, big news, heavily favored opinions all across the NFL, NBA, MLB, and so much more. So come check us out every Saturday evening at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. For a down south education on Florida sports and athletics, it's hosted by yours truly, Corey Pujols, and is powered by IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
What's up, Pittsburgh? This is Ralph Calise, the host of the Injury Report on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Are you that passionate, die-hard Steelers, Penguins, Pirates, or just a Pittsburgh sports fan? Then please join me on the Yins Report every Tuesday on IE Sports Radio, the direct feed for all that is sports. And I will update you on all that's black and gold and have you telling your Pittsburgh fans and friends what's up with Pittsburgh sports. Tune in Tuesday with me, Ralph Calise, the Yinzer Report on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Let's go!
By the way, great signing by the Steelers, getting Arthur Smith to be their offensive coordinator. At least now the Steelers, when outside the organization, actually got somebody. Maybe the Jets should take notice. Final segment here on New York State of Sports. Ricky Keeler here with you again. We'll wrap it up real quick with a little bit of baseball. But next week, 3 p.m. Eastern, not 2 p.m. Eastern, we'll be live for episode 4 of New York State of Sports, and we'll recap what the Knicks and Nets do at the trade deadline. That'll be the main focus of next week's show, as well as looking ahead to Super Bowl 58 between the Niners and the Chiefs. Real quick, Mets end up helping out their bullpen. They re-signed Adam Ottavino to a 1-year, $4.5 million deal. I like the move for them. It gives them a setup option behind Edwin Diaz. And now you have kind of a semblance of a late inning trio with Brooks Raley. The Mets also reportedly added Jake Diekman to their bullpen, a good lefty option. So the Mets are getting things done. It may not be what the fan base wants, where they want that DH bat with JD Martinez or Jorge Soler, but they at least make margins in getting veteran relievers, something they did not do last year. Last year, Billy Epler banked on adding young guys and having that flexibility with options. This year he's kind of taking it a different direction. Or David Stearns is taking a different direction. Yankees, I'm still waiting to see what they do with that pen. They lose out on Wandy Peralta. Padres give him 4 years, $16.5 million with 3 opt-outs. So props to Yandy Peralta for getting that done. And he deserves it. That guy was great for the Yankees, did everything they could possibly ask him to do late in the game. So you tip your cap to him. But you look at this Yankee bullpen, and outside of Clay Holmes and Jonathan Loaizaga, who now is going to be that new Mike King guy, in terms of that fireman reliever, what do you have? Tommy Kahnle going into his age 35 season. Ian Hamilton, does he repeat last year? Scott Efros back from Tommy John. Victor Gonzalez, they got the trade with the Dodgers. Does he be that lefty that steps up for Peralta? We'll see. But you give the Yankees this much. Their pitching coach, Matt Blake, does a really good job in finding up 1 or 2 pitches that a middle-of-the-road reliever has and turning it into a super pitch and elevating his status. There's usually 1 or 2 guys that end up doing that for the Yankees each year. Hamilton was that last year. Ron Marinaccio has been that at times. Lucas Leckie, who used to be here, has been that at times. Different pieces end up working for the Yankees. I mean, Wandy Peralta was a no-name guy until he emerged on the scene. So you have to give the Yankees the benefit of that doubt, but you would love to see them do more to this roster than just adding Juan Soto, even though they did add Marcus Stroman. We'll dive into what their big questions are for each team. We'll do kind of a spring training preview in a couple weeks, pitchers and catchers report on February 14th, Valentine's Day. So next week will be the trade deadline show, and then we'll do kind of a baseball show on the 15th. So we're going to have some fun with that. Free agency special today. I know WNBA for the New York Liberty fans. And you saw last night at the Nets game, Breanna Stewart and Jonquel Jones were recruiting Nneka Ogwumike. Liberty trying to make that super team. Remember, they got to the final last year, and they lost to the Vegas Aces. So we'll have some fun. We'll do some WNBA on this show, I think, this year. And finally, in terms of the reliever market, David Robertson, he signs with Texas. And if you're looking for a fun trivia question for the folks at home, there are only 2 pitchers, with Joe Smith, former Met reliever, retiring, 2 pitchers that have pitched at Shea Stadium in their careers. Remember, Shea was done as a stadium in 2008. Max Scherzer and David Robertson. Both are now with Texas. And Robertson will help. He'll be big with Leclerc. I'm not shocked the Yankees didn't get him because there was a kind of a ripple out effect when Robertson left the Yankees. Mets, he was good for them in the first half of last year. You could argue that maybe they should have brought him back, but teams don't want to pay much for bullpen guys right now. Hector Neris got $9 million from the Cubs. That's a lot, at least in the grand scheme of things. So we'll see where things go. So again, 3 p.m. Eastern next week. We'll do some trade deadline. We'll have some fun. Follow me on Twitter at Rickinator555. You can follow at NY State Sports IE on Twitter and at IE Sports Radio. Again, coming up later tonight, Magic City Scoreboard with JB, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific, and then the Extra Mile with Daryl and Chris. We're talking some auto sports at 8 p.m. Eastern. Again, this has been a fun show to do. We're in episode number 3. We had a little technical difficulties at the start of the show, but thank you to the chat for chiming in. Larry, thanks for the compliments. Taryn, thanks for the compliments. Thanks everybody for tuning in. I'm excited for next week, our first real big live reaction show. We're going to try to do some more of these if we can. With big events happening in New York, you want to hear from me first before anything else. So trade deadline next week, spring training in a couple weeks, combine in a couple weeks. February is only going to be great here on New York State of Sports because we give you the takes that never sleep from the city that never sleeps. Until next week, Thursday, 3 p.m. Eastern, this has been Ricky Keeler saying enjoy the rest of your week. Enjoy your first weekend in February. Enjoy the Garden this week. Remember, UConn-St. John's at noon. Lakers, Knicks at 8:30 Saturday night. Good college sports mix. Good pro sports mix. Should be a lot of fun. So until next week, thanks for tuning in here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. I'm Ricky Keeler saying we'll see you next time.